Well, hello, scary tale friends. Welcome to the podcast that's guaranteed to lift your spirits. So sit back, relax, and get ready to trick or treat yourself. It's Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
Hello, listeners. We are back with another fun and exciting episode that pairs well with spooky season.
It pairs well with a nice witch's brew, a nice little bubbling drink you could have.
And a black flame candle on the table.
Yes, and maybe some finger sandwiches. Ha 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 ha. We are doing 1993's Hocus Pocus. A movie that I'm sure, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you have to have seen this movie already.
I feel it's a lot of people's jam because on the Facebook page, we're currently doing a ghost bracket. And Thackeray Binks got a lot of votes.
Who is a ghost for 2 minutes of this movie?
I believe I voted for him in round 1, but round 2, he did not get my vote. He does
not. He's currently going up against the Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman, if he loses to Thackeray Binks, the podcast is over. I'm done. By the way, did you know originally he wasn't supposed to even be a ghost at the end? There was the original ending as written in the script was Binks just turns into a regular cat.
Oh,
like he's a cat that talks. Yeah, that doesn't talk.
That doesn't talk, yeah.
So, but that's the one we're doing. Came out in 1993, in July of 1993.
So I read that they did that purposefully because kids were out of school. So they thought it would be a summer movie for kids. And that same year, Nightmare Before Christmas comes out at Halloween-ish time. So the fact I read was it didn't want to compete with another Disney movie.
Well,
and that's why they released it in July, thinking kids are out of school. It'll be something they'll go see in the theater.
Well, regardless of it being a, that was a concerted effort or something they wanted to do, that was a bad idea. And I feel like I always hear that about this movie is like, well, it's a Halloween movie that came out in July.
Yeah, I agree. You see that sometimes too with Halloween songs that sometimes debut in the summer versus debuting in the fall, like songs from the 50s and 60s. So it is interesting that that's what happened. But yeah, surprise, this one did not do so well on its first theatrical go-around.
But has since become such a huge cult hit.
Yes.
And one that is done, because that's the other thing, it's not just a scary movie, it's a Halloween movie. It is about Halloween.
Well, and they title it as a fantasy comedy film.
Yeah.
In a fact I read. So it's a little bit of everything, right? It's Halloween, like you said. It's scary. It's funny. It's got a fantasy element to it. And I think that's part of why it appeals to so many people. I have a bone to pick with Rotten Tomatoes.
What's the Rotten Tomato score?
Do you want to take a guess?
37%.
Oh my God, listeners.
Did I nail it?
38%.
Ooh,
you came between a 1%. I'd say you nailed it.
That's really good. No, and that was, it just feels like something. Listen, I am not going to sit here and call this a particularly excellent paragon of cinema. Yes. But it is a fun movie. And we said the name of it, right? Hocus Pocus?
I think we have.
We have to have said the name.
I surely hope so. And I think, though, my bone to pick is Rotten Tomatoes rates some things higher that probably shouldn't be rated higher. Well, but I know it's also based on how well it does, right?
Remember, Rotten Tomatoes is a terrible metric of how good a movie is. Because all Rotten Tomatoes, 37% of Rotten Tomatoes means 38, sorry. I'm so impressed with my own guess. 38% of reviewers who turned in scores said this movie's either good or bad.
Got it.
If you want to find a better metric, and I don't think they do it much with older movies, but a better metric is Metacritic, where you submit a 1 to 100 score or 1 to 10
Should
score.
we be looking that up for
No,
Disney
I think
films?
this is fine.
Okay.
It's just for people who are like, well, the Rotten Tomatoes, it's like people who are like, Marvel movies tend to get really good Rotten Tomato scores. And I think Marvel movies are good, but at the same time, it's not meaning they're like, this was 94% fresh. Well, 94% of critics could say, it's fine. and that means it's 94%
and it's still
fresh.
94%.
And people go,
yeah.
this movie scored a 94 on the movie test, which is not what that means.
Got it.
So I did not see this when I was a kid.
Yes, I was wondering if you would out yourself that you were not.
I don't think it's outing myself.
Not, but I mean,
I was
confession.
a really cool kid in 1993.
Your
I didn't watch
confession.
these little bitty kid movies.
Okay.
I was the coolest 12-year-old on the block.
So I read that this movie, it's become this cult classic for a lot of children that were born in the 80s and 90s. And Ryan does fit into that demographic.
Just barely.
But we were, I don't remember, I remember exactly where we were the first time we saw it. But I don't know that you and I had ever had a conversation about you not seeing it until that night when you saw it.
I don't know if that's true or not.
I can't recall.
You know, I think both of us are pretty good. Like, I think we first started dating, you know, I think this is with most people. There's the like, you haven't seen this? Oh my God. And I think we were pretty good about it, about like, not like, oh my God, I can't believe you haven't seen it. It's just like, oh, you haven't seen that? Well, let's remedy this right now. Like that time I bought Predator from someone at work. And I came home and you said, what's Predator? And I said, well, it's the movie we'll be watching this evening.
And it was great.
Because I was like, I don't want to tell you anything else because I'm curious what it's going to seem like. But this was a movie we watched I think during spooky season.
During spooky season in New York City with a good pal of ours.
Yes.
And well, of mine, but also now one of Ryan's, a childhood friend of mine.
I have to admit, of all the times I've seen it, I liked it the least that time.
You were very hesitant. You were resistant to watch it.
Well, because I think it's definitely a movie that relies on nostalgia, and there's a bit of it. Like, I think it was one of those movies that, like, it didn't do well. It got thrown onto TV, and I think kids watched it. People watched it a lot.
That's where they credit it getting more popular.
Right.
Was Disney Channel and Freeform, which used to be ABC Family.
ABC Family, Fox Family at one point, like all that sort of thing. You know, it's a staple of the 31 Days of Halloween, which is Freeform, ABC Family, all that sort of thing. So I was kind of resistant against it. I also think the second time I watched it, I'm like, okay, now I know exactly what this movie is. So now I'll start watching the little details you notice, because the three women, the Sanderson sisters, Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker, who all today I realize I've been saying Sarah Michelle Gellar in my head. That's not right.
Well, another actress that works on a spooky show.
There you go. Enveloped these characters and had such huge backgrounds and are having so much fun with them that when you re-watch it, it's just fun to watch them and see what they're doing. I have all this stuff we'll go into here in a sec about all the background they have for these sisters, and this, like, I hope they do more in this sequel. We'll talk more about the sequel as well. I've got not info, like, I just found stuff. Yeah, no, I don't have a scoop. But you know, like, these are people who love these characters. And I think watching them, you get to see them having little fun in the background, even when they're not the focus of the scene.
Well, and I think, as you mentioned, it is a lot of fun to say, okay, this watch through, I'm going to just focus on Winnie. Which is who you probably focus on a lot because she is the main sister, you know, the main focal point. Or this watch through, I'm going to really focus on Max and his character. You know what I mean? Like, you can pick each character from the children to the adult actors in this film. And I think you can pick up a lot of things that you might not have noticed on previous watch throughs, which is what I always enjoy about a movie that has that connection and that nostalgia as well. I do feel like our pal and myself were a little bit of a bully to you about not seeing it and then pressuring you to watch it. And I do feel bad for that. I think it was more so the shock value of, oh my God, I cannot believe you've not seen this and that we've not talked about this up until that point. Because we had been dating a year or two.
I think less than a year.
Less than a year?
I think we were up there for New York Comic Con, correct?
We were, yes.
I figured this out the other day. That was like less than a year. That was in 2012, and we just started dating.
Okay, well then that tracks. That makes more sense. So that was a little bit. Because I thought we had been dating longer, which is why I was more shocked.
It was our first Halloween area together, so. Let's get into the movie. We could talk for days about our experience with this, because we've watched. Actually, let's talk about one more personal thing we have with this movie, which is that we have cosplayed as characters from this movie.
We have.
To a Kathy Najimy was at a showing of this a couple years ago, the year before the
year
Halloween.
before COVID.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we decided, okay, we're going to dress up, but we're not going to dress up as people normally. So we dressed up as the devil and the devil's wife, Gary Marshall and Penny Marshall from this movie, and did so much detail. We'll have to put the pictures up on the Facebook page.
We'll put them on the Facebook page.
Did not win the costume contest, which made us very upset because apparently we weren't there for when something, like, it was a very weird thing.
You had to walk in a certain entrance and then they would decide if they wanted to nominate you for the costume contest. But the details we got in the invite was like, just show up and the costume contest is before Kathy Najimy talks.
Right.
So we just thought we would just walk up on stage with a bunch of other people.
Yeah, it was
a whole big thing, and I was really frustrated about it in the moment.
Oh, you were frustrated.
Hot.
That's a nice way to
I was hot.
But the one thing I remember happening that I didn't think of was the big scene in the movie is Sarah dancing. Not the big scene in the movie, but like what that character is. Like Sarah's like, "May I dance with you, master?" And she's very like sultry character. Mm-hmm. So every Sarah in the place, which there were a few, were all like up on me. Well, not like a lot, but enough to where I was like, my mind's right here.
Yeah, but it was super fun because everyone in that room was a diehard fan and a lover of that film, whether they were cosplaying or not. Mm-hmm. And when they saw who we chose to dress up as, because obviously the majority of the people who dressed up were the witches, were one of the sisters. There was a Billy Bones, which was super exciting.
Yes.
But for the most part, it was the Sanderson sisters. So when everyone saw us as Penny and Gary Marshall, it was super fun because people wanted pictures with us, and we got a picture, I think, with Billy Bones, and it was just a really fun
every Sanderson
love
sister
fest.
wanted a picture because they would do. It was we were props that they were like taking pictures with at some point.
But it was a lot of fun.
I did want to point out that in the making of, I saw Gary Marshall specifically said, "Oh, I got to do 11 takes of that scene with Sarah Jessica Parker, so that's a good way. Makes coming to work fun."
Oh my gosh.
So I did not enjoy it nearly as much. I was I think if I'd been single, I'd been more like, "Hey, how's it going?" But I was like, my wife is
and in
right
the pictures,
here, and this is like I'm very stiff.
But
hold on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm also looking angrily, but that's what she does in the movie. Yes. So I just played that off really well, which was fine. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to mention from that night, I'm glad you brought it up, is I won't go into all the details, but Kathy Najimy tells this story about her connection with Bette Midler before they did the film.
Do you remember this story? Because I don't.
You basically come to find out that she stalked her.
Yes.
She was at Hollywood Bowl performing for something, and Kathy Najimy lied her way backstage.
Said she was like
gram, singing
like a telegram,
singing telegram or something.
And then they were like, "Here you go, you're singing telegram." She's like, "Hello," and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm your biggest fan." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and it was like a real awkward, not great thing. I think there were one or two other instances where she was at something Bette Midler was at and was a little bit too obsessed about her.
Was trying to get backstage to see her, and
she tells the story better than anyone can. And then she tells the first day on set.
It wasn't the first day because I thought it was she's like, "I'm not going to tell her the story." It was like a few days later.
It may have been, yeah, but regardless, it was one of those things where she talked about how she felt the first day on set, being with the divine Miss M, and then, a couple days later kind of confessing to her, "Hey, do you remember this person who came and did this telegram?"
I think she kind of remembered. The interesting thing also in the thing was they were talking about how she was using her nervous energy to portray Mary, because Mary's such a brown noser. And always like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Winnie," and like all this. And apparently she was like, it was really easy to play that part because I just kept being like, "I'm sorry, Bette," very her anxiety about meeting her.
But I was crying. I was laughing so hard at the way she was telling the story.
Let's get into the making of a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk first. Do you know the there's kind of a backstory to the Sanderson sisters?
So I was looking it up, but I did a quick look and couldn't find too much. What did you find about it?
So I think it was mostly created by Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker.
Oh, okay. So they had the script and then they did the backstory.
That's how they got their characters. Was they decided that they all had different fathers.
Interesting.
And that and it's also apparently going to go into the sequel, because in the sequel they're trying to cast, or they were with the information I had, their mother, and they wanted. I'm skipping ahead to the Hocus Pocus 2. Apparently, they want a timeless beauty like Cher or Diane Ross.
Oh, I love
play.
that.
Which I'm
Diana
like,
Ross?
Diana Ross, sorry. I'm like, get Cher. Absolutely. Like, that'd be amazing. But, so Winnie's father was a warlock, like a very powerful warlock.
Okay.
Sarah's father was the village idiot. And the best I could find, Mary's father was legit a bloodhound. So she's like part actual bloodhound.
Actual bloodhound. That's
it's just
funny.
some weird thing they kind of all talked about.
Yeah.
And that's why she's like, she'll like scratch herself and do things like, she's like, oh, I'm part
well,
dog.
and she's always sniffing out for the children.
Like that was, they said, oh yeah, you can smell children. So then they decided, well, your dad she must have had dalliances with because that's a big thing in like old Salem lore about witches is they like lay down with the beast. So the idea that her dad was a bloodhound, something they probably can't talk about in a kid's movie, but it's still very funny.
Well, I've got something about the background that Sarah Jessica Parker's historical, like her family. I read a fact.
I've heard this before.
Yeah, so I read a fact that she researched her family history for that show, Who Do You Think You Are? And I think there's a couple different kinds of those shows where celebrities get the opportunity to travel back to where their ancestors lived, or they find out, they don't know their family history, and it's kind of a surprise as to what it might be. And so she did that, and apparently her 10th great-grandmother, Esther Elwell, was arrested in Salem in the 1600s for committing sundry acts of witchcraft and choking a neighbor to death. And so apparently she never went on trial for it, and I think it was right around when the Salem witch trials ended. I don't remember. It didn't go into too much detail as to what happened to her great-grandmother, but Sarah Jessica Parker said it really changed who she thought she was, and it was this really interesting connection because it was after she had played this character who was a part of these trials in Salem.
So one of the things I also want to talk about with Winifred, she had a reason for why she looks the way she is. She has a lot of makeup because she's very vain. She has especially those little like pursed lips.
Pursed lips, yeah.
She has Queen Elizabeth hair. Like like Bette Midler just like she goes, this is the most I've demanded that about my character look.
Well, and I've heard from interviews I've read that she said this is one of her all-time favorite
I mean,
roles
that's the
to
thing.
have played.
It's shocking that it's taken this long to do a Hocus Pocus 2 because like she's always like, oh, I want to do it again.
Well, and it seems like all three of them.
But she also had buck teeth because she's a flesh eater, is what she said. I was like, well, that's weird, but okay. Also, she always thought of the three of them as the female Three Stooges, and that's why she likes this. Another reason she likes this role, she's like, this is, three bumbling physical comedy women is something you don't get a lot.
Yeah, you don't see a lot. Yeah, and they do it so well, and they play off each other so well. She also mentioned, in a different interview, that Winifred, as well as voicing Georgette in Oliver and Company, are two of her most favorite roles to have played. Apparently, she mentions it about Georgette in, I don't know if it's a biography or an autobiography. It's probably an autobiography. And apparently, she's quoted in that.
I saw an Instagram post or something the other day where someone was cosplaying as Georgette, but like as a human.
Oh, that's cool.
And I got to put it up somewhere. It was great.
That's awesome. So something else I wanted to mention, I'm not going to mention anything from this book, but I want to talk about the book because I forgot everything I read because that's my brain.
Which is funny because I do remember when you read it, it was one of those situations
I wanted to tell you everything about it.
So between the two of us, one of us should have remembered something from that book.
Yeah, but I want to just tell you the title of the book. If you're a super duper Hocus Pocus fan, like myself, it is called Hocus Pocus in Focus, The Thinking Fan's Guide to Disney's Halloween Classic. And it is by Aaron Wallace. And Ryan got this for me, and I remembered loving this book. I actually will probably reread it now that I'm not recalling a ton from it. But I will put up a link for the Amazon book in the Facebook page for anyone who is interested. But if you want to take it further, so to speak, this I think is a great book to do that. And if you look at our cosplay pictures that we're going to post, I may have the book in my robe pocket.
So the big thing about this movie in terms of special effects and everything is the wire work, is the flying stuff, things like that, of which the actual actresses did about 90% of their own wire work. There's very few stunt women.
That's awesome.
It's interesting when you watch it because there's all these different ways that they do it. They have them on wires.
Mm-hmm.
They have in some of the close-up shots, they're on like an arm, which is a lot more easily supported. And like it's basically like it looks like our podcast arms, where it's like they move and they, it's like a teeter totter. They talk a lot about the weight stuff. There's also, when they do far away shots, those are little tiny puppets of them.
Oh,
that
cool.
I'll have to put this video up, that are just detailed enough to be creepy, but like far away you'll never notice.
That's cool.
Apparently, there's a lot of shots of them. Like they ran Sarah Jessica Parker into a tree once.
Oh,
but
geez.
Sarah Jessica Parker was the one who's like, oh yeah, I was up there. I just say leave me up here during breaks and stuff.
I read that.
Yeah, she loved it. She's like, I read a whole entire script on it, like for another movie she was doing.
Yeah, I read a fact that said she thought the harness was so comfortable. She was just very comfortable in it, and so instead of lowering her between takes, she read the New York Times while she was up there. So she may have read several things being up there.
Well, Bette Midler may not have liked it as much as that, but she apparently, in the interview I read, she goes, I never was once worried about, because everyone else was like, we've got our actresses up there, we don't have crash pads below them.
Yeah.
We're trying to do these shots, and they do a lot of work beforehand to make sure they're in there perfectly, but they're like, once they're up there, it's like, go with God.
Yeah.
And Bette Midler was like, I never once was worried about that, but now that you mention it, it's like an interview, she's like, I should have been very worried. It was the wire work. It was a wire worker who'd worked on Point Break. His father did the wire work on Forbidden Planet, and his son was working with him on this. And he said, I hope someday my son goes off and works with his son. It was like this family of wire workers.
Do you know if that happened?
No, I didn't get to research it. This is
okay.
just during like the 1993 interview.
Got it. I read a couple facts about things that were confessed during anniversaries of this film. So it would be like interviews and anniversaries. Mm-hmm. One was Doug Jones.
Yes, who is Billy Butcher's son.
Yes. He revealed that the moths coming out of his mouth
are real.
And I basically gagged when I read that.
So here's how they do it. There's a, he goes, it's like when you're getting dental work and they put something in your mouth to keep it open. Yeah. Only it's a little flexible so he could close his mouth. But it's two reservoirs with a little hole poked in the back of one of them for the dust. So they put all the dust in there.
Yeah.
And it's showing him do that. And they go, 1, 2, 3, go. And he's like, I think he only did it twice, because the first time he did it and they all just went, bleh, it like came straight out. And went down. But like, yeah, those were live moths. Did they look like live moths to you? Like, that's the worst part about it to me. It's not like I was like, how did they do that? I was just like, oh, those are just paper things.
Yeah, or somebody thought maybe it was CGI. People had guesses, but I guess CGI wasn't really.
Well, they're actually using CGI for Binks's face.
Oh,
like,
okay.
They've got, like,
so I
they're
guess they are
animating
using
over
elements of
but
that.
Like, that didn't look CGI to me. It just looked like little, like, if I cut up papers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, boy, that was a lot of work for it's like when Michelle Pfeiffer puts a live bird in her mouth in Catwoman in Batman Returns. Like, and it's like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, it's like you do these big things so that when you watch the screen, you go, oh yeah, cool, and you just let it go by, and it's like, was it worth it? I don't know.
Well, apparently, Sarah Jessica Parker also really ate the spider. She revealed on the 25th anniversary that she ate the spider. Which is, it's just like another weird quirk, but it does seem like all the actors in this film were very dedicated to their characters. I feel like the more research we do,
I feel like now they're willing to admit that now, because it's like, it's the 25th anniversary. Yeah. My God, what a great movie. But like, in August of 1993, when it came out, ate it at the theater, they're like, I can't believe I ate a spider for this movie.
And all three of their careers were in very different places in 1993 versus now, right? So that's another thing too. Also, I read that Max Dennison. Did you read who was offered?
Oh, Leonardo
roles?
DiCaprio.
Yeah,
he was offered it. the writer talks about it in this thing I read where he was like, they kind of told me he was gonna do it, and I think what happened is that's who they wanted to do it, because he was like, no, thank you.
Well, he went on to do What's Eating Gilbert Grape, so that's what he did instead. So probably the right choice for him, since he was critically acclaimed for that role. I also came across that Rosie O'Donnell was offered the role of Mary originally.
I mean, I could see that, but like, it would have been a very different character.
Yeah, agreed. I think everyone in this film is who they should be in this film. But I read that, and I also came across that J-Lo auditioned for Sarah Sanderson.
I'm going to throw in a fact for another Halloween movie that has nothing to do with this, just because I read this fact today. Elvira just released a big book.
Yes, I want to read it.
Apparently Brad Pitt auditioned before he was Brad Pitt, for the male lead in Elvira, Mistress of Darkness.
Oh, really?
Like the hunky guy who's, I don't know who that actor's name is now. And she goes, and it was, her note was, yum, yum, in the thing. And then she met up with him later, and she goes, you owe me for not ruining your career by casting you in my movie.
Yeah, that's really funny. And then also Cloris Leachman was the first choice for Winifred.
Cloris Leachman should be their mother. Is she still with us? Has she passed?
I don't know. Do you want me to look
I'll
it up?
look it up real quick. You go on.
I really don't have a ton more. One other thing I will mention is another thing that we did over the pandemic. Bette Midler, and
she just passed this year.
Oh, really?
She was 95.
Wow.
My goodness.
I'm going to get the organization.
She'd been good.
Let me say this fact again, because I want to get the organization right.
I think Bette Midler, not her name, Betty White should be in it. I just thought I was thinking of other.
Ooh, that would be good.
But I don't think she should be their mother. I think she'd just be another witch.
Yeah. So another thing that we did to connect us to this film during the pandemic last year, during Halloween, Bette Midler every year hosts a big fundraising event for the New York Restoration Project. Mm-hmm. She founded it in 1995, and it renovates gardens, restores parks, plants trees, does a lot of things for the city of New York. And they did a Halloween event. I think most times it was in person, and lots of celebrities come dressed up. So instead, they did a virtual version, and that's where we saw the Sanderson sisters unite.
It was supposed to be like a documentary on the Sanderson sisters, and it was also just, it was so goofy because they kept going to everyone's door and knocking on it, and then like it was cut so that it was a 2-shot, so it could be like them, and then someone would just film the reaction for the door. But who Jamie Lee Curtis was in it a ton.
Yes.
Do you remember what the bit was with Jamie Lee Curtis?
I don't off the top of my head, but I just remember it was silly and goofy, but it was fun to see these three reunite, and then
there's a fourth Sanderson sister now. You don't remember the fourth Sanderson sister?
Oh, yes.
What is his name?
Todrick. Yes, that's right. Todrick Hall. Yes. I forgot about that. But it was fun to see them reunite, and then I think shortly after that is when they officially announced that there would be a sequel, which I read had a date of 2022, but I don't know if that's now pushed back due to the pandemic
The last I saw is fall of 2022,
okay.
So I'm assuming like they're probably just filming under pandemic stuff, and it's Disney Plus. Let me go real quick into the information I have about it, because I did a Disney Plus original. So 3 young women bring the Sanderson sisters back. Anne Fletcher is the director, who is the choreographer of Hairspray and the director of The Proposal.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be a movie for adults and children, which is what they say about every movie, because it's like they're trying to reach a demographic. Sam Richardson has been cast and is the only other person famous. Neat. Sam Richardson, he's in Veep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in that werewolf movie we keep meaning to see.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like I said earlier, there was a rumor that their mother will be in it. I have a note up here that has nothing to do with anything, but it's for some reason grouped with this. Thora Birch had a big crush on Sean Murray, aka McGee from NCIS, and enjoyed when they got to share some time like working funny. Together.
I had 1 or 2 things that were like, oh, fun things to note. And one of those was the animatronic cat was used later on. Can you guess what television show it was used in?
Oh, it's got to be Sabrina.
Yes, it was used in Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Which, do you know, that was originally an Elvira show. Elvira pitched it to CBS like Elvira and her 2 aunts lived with a cat and all this blah blah
Oh,
blah. And
wow. No, I didn't
And they
know
were
that.
basically like, we can't have that much cleavage on CBS. And then 2 years later, they started doing Sabrina.
Oh,
and
that's
she was like,
frustrating.
Yes.
Another fact about an animal. The devil's dog was Kathy Najimy's dog.
Oh, yeah.
So Gary Marshall's dog.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have one more fact. Gary Marshall asked Bette to sing "Wind Beneath My Wings" in her witch outfit every day that they shared on set. And Billy Butcherson with no head is played by a much smaller woman, which I thought was interesting. I've started to look into how to do Headless Horseman costumes because I kind of want to do that one year.
That would be really fun. Speaking of Billy Butcherson, his stitches, I've never noticed this, so I'm going to look out for it when we watch it here in a second. Apparently, it's the Roman numeral for 13.
So it'd be XII?
XIII.
Yes.
Yes.
This is 10 and then 3.
Yeah, so apparently that's what the stitching is. So we'll have to keep a lookout for that. But that goes into what we said at the beginning of this, all the intricate details that I think there are things you can pick up on. So listeners, if there's anything you notice along the way in your viewing, we'd love to hear about it. And we're really excited to watch it and see if we can pick out anything else.
Yeah, are we ready to start?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's take the VHS out of the clamshell and stick it in the VCR.
See you on the other side, listeners. Hello, listeners.
Tara's exact quote was, "So good as always."
Yes,
when we
this
finished
is a
watching
yearly movie for us. We see it at least once a year. It was on, where was it on that I got side? Oh, my boss takes us out for kind of a night and we do pedicures and we do dinner somewhere. And it was on when we were getting pedicures, and it was hard for me to pay attention to conversation because I couldn't stop looking at the TV and watching it.
Do you remember when we went and saw this? Did we see it at a park somewhere or something?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we've had so many special memories with this
Yeah.
movie. One of the first years we moved here to the Austin area, and I think they do it every year. They do different movies in the park, and it was
Right.
at this park in Austin. It was an inflatable screen. And
I missed most of it because
I know.
it was the longest line for
food trucks.
trucks.
Yeah, that was a bummer. But yeah, we've seen it there. Then when we saw Kathy Najimy speak, then they showed the movie after
Yes.
she talked. So we've seen a screening that way as well.
Well, let's get started because we are recording a little late tonight.
Yeah.
It's the bewitching hour.
Well, it opens up, and we notice that it's rated PG, and the description for PG is scary depictions, which, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then tobacco, but
There's one line where Ice says, "If you don't give us smokes, you better give us something else."
but
And
I
that's
didn't
it.
see anyone actually smoking.
Other than Sarah Jessica Parker.
Okay.
Woo!
And Max has the lighter, but he never lights
Yeah.
a cigarette. So that was the only, the closest to tobacco. So I did find that interesting. But it opens with the book and then a shadow of a witch flying. And
It
I
opens
think
with a different book, not the book.
but just a book.
Like an old book, and it opens.
Yeah.
It's like it's telling the story.
But I really like the shadow of the witch flying. We don't know who it is, and you kind of see it as they're flying over this landscape.
Well, I think it's animated.
Oh, really?
It looks animated.
Interesting. And they fly to a village, and you hear Sarah's song in the background, what we come to know as Sarah's song. And so I think it's Sarah flying.
It is Sarah, yeah.
And we find out that Zachary realizes they're conjuring. He sees kind of the light coming from the woods.
With Elijah, who's a character I never remember.
Yeah. And
It's the smoke from, it's this
smoke,
weird
that's
colored
right.
smoke.
And he starts running to find Emily, and you see
Barefoot through the leaves.
I mean, it's an emergency, but you see that Emily is being lured by Sarah, in the distance. There are two images of them, going off into the woods, which I thought was a cool touch as well.
So that is actually in Salem.
I
those
think
shots where he's running through
yes,
the house is a set, and it's like a full house they built.
it is. I had read that they spent a chunk of time filming in Salem, so I
I'm
think
sure
there are
modern
other
stuff's in
scenes
Salem is too.
in Salem, but I don't know what is and what isn't.
Sean Murray, the actor who does the physical embodiment of Thackeray Binks.
Yes, we should say it's not his voice.
I believe it's Jason Marsden, but I'll get it. But for some reason, I turned my phone off, so I have to wait for it to come back on.
You
But
were in a movie theater. You had to turn your phone
I
off.
don't know why I did. Yeah, I got used to it. But he did mention this part was in Salem, so like. I think I think the end is filmed on a blue screen so they could do his effect where he's a ghost.
I see.
So this is probably only his time in Salem.
Got it.
But I think the rest of it could be that it had a very Massachusetts, New England looking structure to all the houses and everything. So.
Yeah, and I had read that they spent. I read and I didn't write it down the dates of when they were in Salem filming. So they did spend some time there filming. I also think it's such a good shot of them because we haven't seen what they look like yet. We haven't seen the faces of the witches, and the first time we see them, we see their backs and they're surrounding Emily. And so I just think that that's a cool first shot that we see all three of them with their capes without seeing what they look like. And then they go into the spell to take Emily's life. We find out that they want to be younger, and to do that, they need to have the souls of children. And so they go in to this whole spell with the dead man's toe, and they need a bite of their tongue?
A bit of their own tongue,
bit of their
bite
own
it
tongue.
off.
Yes.
Of course, when they turn around and they're in their ugly old versions, that's the version Tara was like, I need to cosplay.
I just don't think a lot of people do the old version of them, and I think they're way more... They're interesting regardless, but when you really look at them old, their teeth are all rotted out, like Winifred's fingernails are discolored.
Winifred's teeth are the same as they are when
yes,
she's young.
Winifred's
which I think
teeth
is
are nice.
Kind of a funny joke of like the first time you see her, like, oh, look at those teeth. And then it's like, nope, that's just it.
Yeah, but her fingernails are discolored compared to what they are later on.
Oh, they're beautiful press-on nails later.
Well, yeah, her makeup, just all of them.
Yes.
There's a lot of detail to make them look old and weathered, and then when they turn young and beautiful.
Younger
after
yes.
they have Emily's soul. But did you hear what he called you? I love that line too, when Thackeray calls them a hag. There's a lot of good one-liners throughout this whole film. And they wind up changing Thackeray to a cat. They want to punish him more than killing him. And so instead, they are going to have him live forever and kind of watch what they do to the town, what they've done to his sister. So then the townspeople come get them because they know that Thackeray went to get Emily, and they go to get them, and they're at the gallows, and the book opens up.
Well, no, first they go, she goes, sisters, they're like, ah, but then they don't sing. They do like this weird cacophonous chant of like, I spit 12 times on the 12 tables. Pss, pss, pss. Like
I love it so much. It's great.
But they tune up to something that's
yes,
not a song. I don't know
really
why it
good.
tickles me so.
I love it too. And
there's so much weird stuff they're saying and doing that going back through it, I think the biggest failing of this is kind of the sound edit. Because I think it's hard to tell what they're doing. I would suggest watching this with, if you know, even if it's your first time, but if you've seen it a few times, watching it with subtitles.
I would agree with that.
To catch all the little jokes and stuff they say, because sometimes they're moving so quickly that they kind of what the sisters are saying gets lost in this background.
Yeah, and I will say having the subtitles, it's kind of fun to read everything. And so that transforms. They say they're going to be back in 300 years, and then you see their legs dangle. And then... Which
is kind of a little... So they get hung.
Little macabre.
They're hanged, they're hung, I don't know which...
And,
but that's something to look out for if you got kids watching this.
Yeah,
I'm sure the kids won't say anything. But I did say that was the best time to see, if you're a cosplayer, what their... footwear looks like, because Sarah almost just has cowboy boots. It looks like.
Yeah, and there's one other shot when, well, at least of Winifred, when she lifts up her dress, that you can see her shoes and her stockings very well. But this is the other scene you can see that.
I think there's actually a lot of feet shots of them in this movie, and not in like a weird Quentin Tarantino fetishizing way. Just like they seem to really be like into their footwear.
Well, and the rhythm of the way they move.
Yes, Kenny Ortega, I believe his name was the director, and he was a choreographer for a lot of movies before this. So there's kind of, he said something about, he's like, I like to find the rhythm of a scene, and I think that's why you were asking why they do that, like the hag walk or something. She calls it something when they're in the school, and it's the hag march or something.
Oh, I didn't pay attention.
I thought that's what it said. In the
subtitles.
In
the subtitles, it might call it something. Yeah, I don't think it's verbalized what it is.
Well, no, I think Winifred says something like to get them lined up.
Oh,
but it's there's so much just screaming and talking that going on that some of that gets lost. But it's like the left, right, right, and that feels like something a choreographer would do. Sometimes when they leave a scene, they go in an order that feels like a dance. Like the blocking is very rhythmic in kind of a way. I like it a lot.
And that's when the narration turns over to the voice of a teacher. And so now we are in present day.
I got to find out who that actress is. Keep going. But I feel like she's in a million things.
And the teacher tells this tale, 300 years ago to the day is the story of the Sanderson sisters. And
Kathleen Freeman, who was the penguin in in the Blues Brothers. She's in the Naked Gun movie. She's does the voice of an old woman in Shrek. She's been in a million comedies. She's great. But...
Oh, okay. Well, then we get introduced to Max and Allison and the rest of the class, and Max is too cool for school, comes from California, has a tie-dye shirt, is drawing a picture of the Grateful Dead, doodling while the teacher's telling this story, and does not believe. And you made a good point that in a lot of these types of tales, it's one person believes and no one else believes, and this is kind of the reverse where the town believes to some extent, this tale.
Well, we've seen the reverse in the origin of this scene from Ernest Scared Stupid, when the girl is the only one who believes.
For those of you who listen to Ernest Scared Stupid,
go back and listen to our Ernest Scared Stupid episode.
They do a similar opening as Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus steals a lot of ideas from Ernest. From this stands on the shoulder of a giant.
I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but. Max winds up cutting through the graveyard. He gives Allison his number, and she's kind of flirty with him, but then hands it back to him. And he cuts through the graveyard to get home on his bike. And this is where we meet Jay and Ernie, but not Ernie.
It's Iceman.
It's Iceman. I told you.
Ice now. Tara asked me if I knew anybody who ever shaved anything in the back of their head, and I don't think I did growing up, but if you did, please let us know.
Yeah, I feel like there were kids in school who did, but nobody that I was close enough friends with, and nobody that I can remember what it was that was shaved in their head. But they wind up stealing his cross trainers. They call him Hollywood, and they bully him.
Are they Nike shoes?
They're Nike shoes, yeah.
Because then later they got the Nike bag. Yeah, he's got the Nike bag. I didn't think about that. So there's a Nike scholarship or sponsorship.
So then we get introduced to Danny, who is amazing. We were talking about
Thora
this in the
Birch,
movie.
Who would go on to be in American Beauty and some other stuff.
Yeah, we were just talking about strong women.
She's apparently a bad guy in The Walking Dead a couple seasons ago. Like when they showed me the picture, I went, "Oh God, that's Thora Birch." And then she looks like herself now. But what they did in The Walking Dead, she's got a shaved head.
Yeah.
And it's something I don't really want to talk about on this Disney podcast, but they do some crazy stuff with it. I was like, wow.
But we get introduced to her here, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but just really impressed with her as an actress and as a character.
When she was auditioning, I told you that they went into the room and she had her feet up on the table, and the director, and she immediately when the director sat up straight, and he's like, no, get comfortable. And she's like, oh, what do you want to talk about? She's like, I don't know. What do you want to talk about? She goes, anything except the industry. It was just, they kept joking about how she was 10 going on 40.
And she has that in this film as
yes.
well. She has a couple lines and the way she carries herself. But when we're introduced to her, we're seeing through her eyes. She's in the closet.
Very Michael Myers.
About to scare Max. And the music gets very horror movie.
Myers.
Yeah, creepy. And she pops out and she says boo. And she overhears him, daydreaming about Allison with a pillow.
Yes.
And I wrote here how much I love their relationship. We see it throughout the film, but he genuinely cares for her. They fight and are annoyed with each other like I think a real brother and sister are, especially that age difference, where he's becoming an older teenager. And so now he's more... he's paying attention more to his image and what people think of him, but he still cares for her and still wants to look out for her. And she looks up to him, and it's a really good relationship.
I also like her witch costume.
I do too.
We've got a lot of really good costumes to talk about in this movie.
I wrote them down a little bit later, but her witch costume is very good.
If you've watched this movie a lot, just have a viewing where it's like looking up
follow
Halloween
the costumes. Yeah, follow the kids' costumes throughout the town. Follow the adult costumes in the costume party.
There's a Mrs. Potts that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty good. And that one's pretty prominent. You see Mrs. Potts go up to get candy and then come through the witches to leave. But the next part is they wind up going trick-or-treating. Max doesn't want to go, and the parents are going to this party, so he's got to take them. And I wrote here, and I'm saying it on the air to remember, that we want one year to paint a pumpkin like that witch that they zoom in on. They zoom in on
like
this
green
bright green
pumpkin,
pumpkin that's painted with this like crooked smile of a witch.
It almost looks like those Mr. and Mrs. people.
A little bit.
You know, there was like Mr. Happy and Mr. Hungry.
Yeah. I used to have all those books. Little Miss Sunshine was one, I think.
They run into Ice and I forgot the other guy's name again.
Ice and
Ralph.
Jay
and Ice.
Yeah, they're like, you got to pay the toll. So when you come away from getting candy to leave this person's yard, you've got to pay them X amount of candy.
And Danny like stands up to them, shows that again.
She's real like feeling confident, and she's got her big brother with her, and she thinks her big brother, she thinks the world of him. So she's like, well, I've got my big brother.
They kind of have a back and forth after that, and they end up going to what they think is like this Richie Rich house, and they just walk inside trick or treat, and there's a big cauldron of candy of whole candy bars. And then Allison is up at the top I thought this was funny because this is apparently the rich house, and they have no sense of irony. They're all just dressed as like French aristocracy, which, we know how well that worked out for them. Listen to our Beauty and the Beast episode. And she, they start talking, and she starts talking about the Sanderson sisters, and she's like, oh, my mom used to run the museum, and Max is like, well, why don't we go? And that great idea of like, hey, let's make out in a cemetery, or all the terrible things people do in horror movies.
Well, and I also think he wants her to like him, and he knows she's into the story, and now he found out her mom used to work there
he's
because
co-opting, he's co-opting his sister's interest.
Yeah, it became a museum. So, and he's trying to, you see this bit with him and Danny where he's like, oh yeah, I take her trick-or-treating every year. And he's like, our parents made him, like he's trying to present a version of himself that isn't entirely accurate at this point for Allison to be more, make him more likable to her.
So they head to the museum, the Sandersons' house.
And you talked about how they fully built this house.
Yes, and that the production designer begged to be on this movie, went to Kenny Ortega and was like, please, I want to be on this movie. I'm a huge Halloween dork. And they made this whole entire house that was so big that they could never quite film all the little details. Like Kenny Ortega goes, I would need twice as much film to film all the little details.
Yeah, which is very cool.
The name of the production designer is Bill Sandell.
Okay.
So yeah, he made a big deal about doing that.
Very cool.
I do like all the details of the museum part of this, like the Zippos and the weird stuff you can,
and the postcards and the cash register.
They just abandoned it. Like they didn't.
Yeah, it said there's a sign later on that they zoom in on that says it's under renovations, but yeah, I think it just closed down.
No, it's just covered in cobwebs.
No, there is.
I believe you. There's a sign, but I think that sign is incorrect.
Yeah. But do you know for the sequel if any of the original production people, or I know you said it's a different director, but I'm curious.
I don't know. I mean,
curious if any original people besides the talent, the actors, are going to be associated with it.
I feel like it's going to be easier to hire for it though, because even if you don't have the original people, there are people who are so into this lore.
Yes, but I'm curious if they would bring back.
I'm
idea. Curious about that, so I'd love to be on the lookout for that as we get more information about the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
But we then find out the piece of the lore that we haven't heard about yet, which is the black flame candle, which has become central to the story. This Allison tells us about.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, Allison tells us about the lore of the black flame candle and how, it's said if it's lit by a virgin that the witches will come back.
And a cat tries to stop them from doing it.
Yes, and this is where we meet Binks.
Well, we don't know it's Binks. It just could be a cat.
I guess that's true. We do meet Binks. She does change. She changes him, and then we don't really see him. He's kind of like off in a hill.
Oh,
when
right.
The witches,
Yeah, no,
so
this is
we
definitely
do kind
Binks.
of
We
see
know.
him.
But we don't know he can talk yet.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So
why didn't he say anything to his family? Do you think he learned to talk if a cat had
I'm
300
sure he
years?
learned to talk over time. Yeah, I don't know that it was like, or maybe he didn't realize he could talk. He was probably so distraught and shocked.
I like
that
the
moment.
idea that any cat given 300 years could learn to talk.
If they were alive,
If they were alive that long.
Yeah. So I wrote here such a good entrance. When Max lights this candle, all of the light switches and candles go off, and then they all come back on. And there's a lot of physical stuff that happens in the house before we see the witches, and it's a really cool sequence.
It's really interesting you say that because originally it was different in the script. They were supposed to like come out of the candle.
Oh,
And
yeah, I like this much better.
But that's interesting that it's so good, but it's definitely done as a budgetary restraint.
Yeah.
Which is one thing I'm worried about the new one. I'm curious how much digital stuff they're going to do.
And how much money they're going to have for the new one. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like Jaws. You know, when you think of like Jaws and all the issues they had with the shark, if they did it the way it was originally planned, it may have been a totally different movie.
This is definitely like when you can only do stuff physically, it's still so affecting.
Yeah.
Them like everything moving around, them just walking. And when the door opens up, like, listeners, you won't be able to see this, but Tara will. Bette Midler looks like
she
looks
good.
so manic. It's amazing.
We said this at the top, but I really recommend, if this is a movie you really enjoy, to pick a sister and just focus on their performance the entire time. I know we did it when we went and saw Kathy Najimy. We both decided, okay, we're really going to focus on Mary in this viewing. And it's super, super fun to do that because there are so many little details that each one of them do.
Sarah's a lot of fun because she's always doing something in the background when, like, I think Mary and Winnie are sometimes kind of the focus. Like,
when they're making the potion.
Mary is there for Winnie to bounce stuff off of, and then it's like Sarah's kind of the odd man out,
aloof.
so she's walking around but she's the Curly or like the Harpo when we were talking about them being like the Stooges or whatever. She's like that, the kind of the real physical comedy one.
Yeah. And so Danny, they smell children and Danny like pops up. She's scared. But she has a little bit of a persona, and then Max does later, and I think that's really good because it's on the spot. And she goes, what does she say? I thought thou would never come.
She's
Something
trying
like
to
that.
pitch that she let them loose.
Yeah, that she was the one who lit the candle, and that it was on purpose that she lit the candle to, to have them show up.
I feel like that's going to be in the new one. Is it's something where it's three kind of girls who are maybe like goth or a little bit spooky kind of people, and they get the idea to do this for fun, or like they're literally trying to bring back the Sanderson sisters, and they don't realize how, like, because I think we have that thing now where everyone's really into Halloween, and then there's like how dangerous witches really are, or the Sanderson sisters would really be.
Yeah, I would say the Sanderson sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, they're kind of goofing around with it, and then it's like, oh no.
Potentially. I'm super curious what the story is going to be like for the sequel, for sure. But this is where Max then introduces himself as the great and powerful Max, and how he's going to do the burning rain of death, and it's the sprinklers, and it's another really like on your feet, quick thinking.
There's actually a scene right before this where Allison jumps out. She grabs a frying pan. She goes, "Hey, Mary!" And Mary turns around and she goes, "Yes, hello." Like, the way she says it is so good.
It's really good. But when he goes with the lighter before he lights the sprinkler, he makes fire in his hands. Like, there's so many good lines. We're going to obviously say some of them, but there's so many good one-liners in this. Yeah.
I love this movie.
But this is then some of the other things I wanted to talk about. The makes fire with his hands, other things that they're not sure what it is because it's modern day times that I enjoy is the Black River, and then they push Sarah
into it.
Yeah, and it's asphalt.
Yes.
And so it's firm as stone. The sirens from the fire truck really spook them because they don't know what the heck that is.
The witch hunters because they wear black robes and carry axes.
The firemen, calling them witch hunters. The contraption being the bus and them
Yes.
trying to figure that out. You know, it'll take you to your desire.
All of this is kind of them figuring out, like, this is what happens while the kids grab the book and run with Thackeray, and this is them figuring out the town and kind of running into stuff.
And this is when the kids realize that the cat talks. And at this point, they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, we've seen the Sanderson sisters. They're not super surprised that Binks talks.
They run to the...
They grab the spell book
They
on
grab
the
the
way
spell
out.
book, and they run to the cemetery because Binks says... I also love this movie kind of setting up some decent, well thought out lore for witches. I mean, this, I know we talked enough about Ernest Scared Stupid, but one of the things about Ernest Scared Stupid I liked is the lore they set up for these trolls that, like, kind of has nothing to do with anything, but is like, they do this and they do this, and they do the same thing with witches. Witches cannot set foot on hallowed ground. Later, like, salt creates a barrier, which is kind of a big thing for supernatural creatures in the show Supernatural.
Yeah.
But they head there and they shows them Billy Butcherson's grave for foreshadowing.
Well, and he also, to tell the story of how ruthless Winifred is,
Yes.
he basically says, you know, he was her boyfriend, and then he started being with Sarah.
Caught sporting with Sarah.
Yeah, sporting with Sarah, and so she killed him and sewed his mouth shut.
So he'd never tell his secrets ever, and
Even
in
in
the
death.
afterlife. And I love that Winifred seems to have no ill will towards Sarah for this. Just,
I mean, does she though? I mean, she's
not specifically for this.
Yeah, in general, she seems very put upon by her sister.
Yeah, she thinks her sisters
Yes.
are stupid, but like they seem like a tight knit group, and she's like, "Oh, this is Billy's fault."
I guess that's true. Yeah. So she does bring Billy back to life, and they're flying over the graveyard, and she basically wants Billy to go after the kids. Now, Billy's mouth is sewn shut, and it is a 13. We were able to catch that. And for the majority of the film, the kids are very scared of Billy, and rightfully so. And he can't talk, so he can't tell them what he's thinking, but we do get to hear it later on.
Yes.
And at this point, the sisters are getting into the bus. They're going through these, are they catacombs? It's kind of like a sewer system under the street.
Yeah. It goes into the sewer system.
Yeah, and Binks is like, you know, I used to chase mice down here. This is a great way that we can kind of get away from them. And when they go up through a manhole at one point to see where they're at, then the bus, Sarah's driving the bus, runs over Binks. They get really upset.
He blows up like a balloon. Yeah. And it has this terrible bone, like, stitching back together.
Oh, yeah, that sound, and when they bite their tongue and spit into the cauldron, that's the other one for me.
And it turns out Thackeray can't die. Not only can he not, he just has a long life, he cannot die. Like, they're making him stay alive to feel guilty.
Yes. So the next thing we see is all the kids dressed up. They want children. Mary smells children on the bus, makes the bus driver stop. The bus driver has a couple...
He's kind of a creep, but I feel like some of it's kind of charming because he's like... I'm going to be honest, like, if out of the three of them, like, Sarah is the most classically good-looking one, right?
Yeah.
But when they open the door, he's like, hey, ladies. Like, he's into all of them, except for Winifred when she leaves, and he's like party pooper.
Well, yeah, because she takes them away.
And he gives and she gives him the most like Tara look I've ever seen.
So they leave, they smell children, and then they see this house, and they're like, oh, it's Master's house. It kind of has
They don't say it
flames.
until he comes out. And he just
that's right.
But this is also where we see Sonic the Hedgehog, so be on the lookout for the Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog. We see Mrs. Potts here. We see a Michael Myers mask.
We think it's a Michael Myers.
It looks like a Michael Myers
It's definitely a
mask.
white mask with black hair.
Yeah.
And we've just seen Halloween Kills, and we were like, it's Mike Myers.
Yeah. So they think he is the master, that he is the devil himself. He invites them in. And there's so many good faces from Winifred here. And one of the best ones is when she asks about the book, and he says, we'll get to the book later, and hands her a Clark bar. And her face, you've got to watch it. And it's so good because she
And then she just like sachets angrily off.
She carries that expression, like behind him and off. And it's so good. But this whole scene is great. Penny Marshall's fantastic. It's just a really, really good scene. She comes down being excited. She's lost 5 pounds, and she sees that Sarah is dancing with her husband, and she's like, that's it. You need to get out of this house.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And that's when Winifred starts to put together, he's not actually the master. These aren't actually goblins and ghouls. These are children dressed up.
We did miss the 3 little girls dressed as the Sanderson sisters.
Yes, who take the brooms.
Steal their brooms, and then they just walk off screen, but you hear like whoosh, whoosh of them, and I'm like, did they, like, is the implication they just went flying off into the night? And I want to know what happened to those children.
Yeah, what was the rest of their night look like? But this is then when...
Maybe those are the 3 children in the sequel, the 3 girls who...
Maybe. I am curious how many years they're going to... If it's going to be a present day.
I think it is going to be. So they would be... I think it's young women is how they refer to themselves.
Yeah. So then we've got them trying to tell adults. They do this in a couple different ways that, hey, the Sanderson sisters are back. This is really important and really serious. And first they find a cop. And they try to tell this cop, he's like, I'm a virgin, I lit the candle. And the cop gives him a hard time. And we realize he's just dressed up for Halloween. He's not actually a cop. Then they go to the costume party. They're trying to find their parents. And anytime the costume party appears, be on the lookout. We saw an Annie Oakley with like pop guns. Yes. We saw somebody dressed as Tron. The alligator. Tron's the Supremes are in there.
There's one where this guy has like, it looks like he's wearing a like gangster outfit that he made out of like the cartoon section of the newspaper.
Oh yeah.
That was
it's like
so weird. Yeah, it's a suit, but it looks like it's made out of comic strips.
Yes,
like black and white comic strips.
Yeah, well, it kind of looks like all the suits that they make now with like the David S. Pumpkins and It's All Pumpkins.
Yeah,
it's a little reminiscent of that, but this is way before that was like a thing to where like there was a suit for every holiday like that.
And the dad is Dadkula.
Yes, and the mom is Madonna.
That's so good.
And we also love the singer. His costume is very cool. Him being a skeleton and his top hat and the cobwebs everywhere.
I think it's pretty simple because it's just that shirt that looks like a rib cage and then like a...
His face makeup is very...
His face makeup's good.
Very detailed.
But it's just face makeup, a top hat, a suit, and then like the shirt you can get that's just a rib cage. There's just cobwebs.
Yeah, but another good costume. So they're trying to explain to their parents. Their parents think they've had too much candy. They don't really know what's going on. And then Max points out, he goes up on stage and he's like, they're here, and points to them. And then Winifred, thank you, Max, for that marvelous introduction. And then it turns into...
I put a spell on you.
I put a spell on you. And I mean, you can't have the Divine Miss M and not have her sing.
When she hits that mine at the end.
It's so good.
It takes my breath away literally. I'm just like, what? Like every year I'm like, God, I forget about it. It happens.
It's a really...
But they're also enchanting the crowd.
Yes, yeah. They're the kids say don't listen and everybody's just like singing and bopping along, and then they say back what the spell is when they're doing the spell.
And Billy shows up and kind of like everyone's like, hey, great costume, like as he's being kind of tossed around.
Yeah, and then it's dance until you die is kind of the last bit of the spell. So we see this later on that they dance all night and they don't stop dancing, all of the parents. So the next bit that we really like, the kids run off and they go into an alley, and they're outside the back of a restaurant, and there's a dude dressed as a pirate, and he goes, which one is going to the jacuzzi? And there's a whole tank of lobsters outside this restaurant, and he goes, Angelo. And we were like, A, why would you name the lobsters? What is it? One. What is
Three things. A, two, and D.
That's a Home Alone. But why would you name the lobster? Why is the tank outside in Salem where it's super cold? And it's just like a really funny moment that I feel like somebody was like, this has to get in the movie. Like they wrote this bit, they thought it was funny. I love it. I think it's funny. But
every year I'm like, why is it outside? Like you don't put a lobster tank.
Yeah.
It's open air outside. If it rains or like I don't know, someone
it
could ash their
freezes. I more
it.
think like it's cold in Massachusetts.
It's got to be a health code or some sort.
Yeah.
But the witches come and she's like, I smell scrod,
Yes, a bottom dweller, bottom feeder. And then they're chasing them and they're...
Well, Allison, there's the old oven outside, and that's where she goes, I've got an idea.
Yeah, and this whole time, Mary is like the bloodhound. You know, they don't always see where they're going, but Mary is sniffing and smelling to follow their trail. And so Allison gets this idea, and they show up at the school, and this is another one where Winifred sees it as a prison for children.
Well, watch that scene, because I don't think that's them. I think that's other people in like their outfits, because they never look at the camera at all.
It's a quick scene.
It is. I would like to see it again, because I really think it's just 3 women in wigs.
I mean, maybe it was something they added later on.
They thought about later.
Yeah, but she interprets it as a prison from children, and then we hear Max come over the loudspeaker with "Welcome to High School Hell," and he's Boris Karloff Jr., and that's the actor
who played Frankenstein and the Mummy and probably
Mummy.
other things.
Yeah.
So they trick them into going into the kiln in the art class.
Which, did you have that in high school? I would have loved to have that.
I think we had one, but I vaguely remember it being very small and like just for the kids who were like taking like serious art, like we never got to use. I feel like maybe.
Yeah, I never took an art elective in high school because I did mostly band and I did mostly music electives.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we had one because I feel like I would have remembered friends. I had friends who did take all the art electives, and I feel like I would have remembered them making ceramics and stuff, and I don't think they ever did.
I vaguely feel like maybe we did. Or maybe they took it off.
But this is a pretty large one. Like this is a walk-in freezer, although it's a walk-in kiln.
But they've got a French tape going that is like. But I for some reason maybe I've noticed it. A lot of times when I watch movies, I go, "Did you ever notice?" And it's like, "Yes, idiot. Last time you watched this,
well,
you
don't
noticed
call
it."
yourself an idiot. But
But
yeah.
they're like, it's all the French stuff is like, "Where is my book?
What kind of book are you
What kind
looking
of book are you looking for?
Yeah.
Where's the library?"
Yes, yeah. So they put them in there. We see all this green smoke. We see them screaming that it's very hot in there.
You see the line of fire go in front of Winifred. She's like,
yeah,
trying to, like, blow
it's
it
really
out.
good, like seeing the 3 of them through that little
Yeah.
window in the door. And so then they're celebrating. You know, they think they've defeated the witches. They're adopting Binks. Binks can live with Danny. And then
She's gonna feed him all the milk and tuna fish he wants.
Yeah, and I love this sentiment, the idea of, you know, Danny's going to take care of him, then her children, then their children, then, you know, and it goes on and on that, like, it'll be an inherited cat from one family to the next. The parents still aren't home, which the kids think are a little weird, but they don't think too much about it. And then they all kind of fall asleep at the house.
The smoke, they basically just play that scene backwards.
Yeah.
And it goes back down the thing, and they all come back, and the door opens. And Winifred has this great way of, like, doing this slow, like, annoyed walk where she's like,
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Where is your book? Bonjour.
Yeah, and then says it in French. It's a really good bit. And they are now they're basically like they're over this. This is where I think it starts to become. Can I not say that?
Yeah, I don't. Let's do that. Now they're mad.
Now they're pretty frustrated. They're pretty angry, and I think this is where Winifred starts to be kind of vindictive, where it's just like, I don't want any child. I want those children. I want those specific children. They've stolen my book. She still doesn't have the book back.
Right.
She doesn't remember the spell. And so they go back to the house. And
It's over.
As they go back to the house, they come across the bullies. They come across Jay and Ice.
Oh, right, because they're
And-
wearing his shoes, and Mary smells his shoes, and she's like, "Oh, wrong child."
Yeah, and it's actually Mary was on the right track.
Yes.
It's just none of them know that.
It's 3 a.m, and Jay says, "How come it's always the ugly chicks that are out late?" And they all 3 turn, and Winifred's like, "Chicks!"
And she does that thing with her hand.
Yes, hard cut to them in cages above the cold.
And I also like that ugly wasn't the issue. It was chicks
It's a
that
little-
bothered
yes.
her. But that was the word that she like focused on. So as that's happening, Allison wakes up, sees what time it is, kind of freaking out. They're talking about poor Binks. You know, he did so much for us. Maybe we could save him. And Allison gets this idea. Well, we can open the spell book now. You know, the witches are gone. And Max at first is like, Binks told us not to. Allison kind of persuades him like what could happen. And when they open it, they don't see this. But the book glows and like shoots this beam of light and it becomes like a beacon. And Winifred at one point said, "Book, make thyself known." So she's kind of commanded the book when it's able to make itself known. And it does. And so this is when she's very depressed and she's written it off that they're doomed. This is the end.
This is the end.
I want to go to the window. I want to say goodbye. And when she goes to the window, that's when she sees the light, and she's so excited that they opened the book, and she's like, those foolish children, we've got one up on them now. And so they head out, and
they head out on a broom, a mop, and a vacuum cleaner since they've lost their brooms.
This is the next kind of iconic scene where, Winifred has kind of a straw broom, Sarah has a mop, and then Mary has a vacuum cleaner.
With cord and everything. That, like, turns on whenever she flies, apparently.
And so they all fly, and Max and Allison are downstairs, and Allison, they read in the book very conveniently about salt, being able to protect themselves with salt from thy victims. I forget how it's worded, but it's worded as if Winifred was reading it about, how she couldn't get to victims with salt.
They go get some salt, which Allison Joke says, good at warding off zombies, witches, and old boyfriends. And Max like, what about new boyfriends? And they almost kiss. And I realized they don't ever kiss in this movie.
Mm-mm. Which I like. I think that's fine.
No, they should kiss at the end.
I mean...
Like,
I don't know.
They're clearly into each other. It's not like one of those ones where it's like, what a shock that they kiss at the end, or that seems wrong. He saved the day. He should get a little smooch.
I guess. But, when that is happening, the kiss gets interrupted because they hear commotion upstairs. And they go upstairs, and they realize Danny's gone. And they start freaking out, and the sisters are in the closet with Danny, and they kind of pop out.
Well, Sarah's in the bed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sarah's in the bed, and they think it's Danny, and they pull the covers down. So they wind up taking Danny, and they fly away, and then you start to hear Sarah sing the song, and she's going to lure all the children from the town, and all the parents are still dancing, so no one's really at home with any of these kids.
Yes. Oh, so that's why they all went to sleep in their Halloween costumes, because they just went to sleep on their own.
Yes, but they're not all in Halloween costumes.
The first shot they do has a handful. Like, there's a kid with his full-on... like jack-o'-lantern
But then later
mask.
On, it's a lot of robes. It's a lot
You're
of plaid.
Right later on, but I was right first.
Okay. There is one girl that has those. What are they? It's like a headband and then it's on springs, and they're like two pumpkins.
Oh, I didn't see
Do you know what I'm talking
it.
about?
Yeah.
There's one girl that's wearing those.
They're like antennae, but they're
a little bit, and they kind of bounce around. So that whole next sequence happens. They're running to the house.
There's two things in that sequence that are great. One, looks like Max does his own stunt when he gets thrown over the drums.
Yeah.
And two, Allison's like weird spin shimmy of the salt circle,
that's right.
Which I love. She's like,
and she saves
this like swoosh. It's amazing.
She saves Max, but she doesn't save Danny.
Yes.
And essentially that's what Winifred says is like, you're not going to be able to
witch.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to save your friends.
Yes.
So they whisk Danny off, and then
they're making the soup, not the soup.
The potion.
To take away her soul.
Yes, and they've got the spell book, and this is where Allison comes up with another idea. She's like, Winifred said that they only have till dawn. She's like, once that black flame candle is extinguished at dawn, they're dust, so we have to wait till dawn.
This is something I talked about to you where it's like, there's, the little sister character and the girlfriend character, but they both have so much to do in this.
Yeah.
Like, every female character, which... predominantly female characters. There's pretty much one main male, which is Max.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it went so well with girls and women who saw it, is because, like, you get a wide variety of things to do. It's not just, and starring a woman, like it has in a lot of these shows. Like, Ernest Scared Stupid, there's, the crazy old lady and then just a girl.
Yeah, I was kind of saving that because I didn't know if we were going into that during, like, Agency and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I 100% agree with you, and we did talk about it while we were watching it, for sure. I think it's a really diverse movie with a lot very...
Well, it's a very white movie, but it's a very diverse...
I guess diverse
gender,
as far as women go, personalities of women.
Yes.
It's diverse. Yes, you're right. It's an all-white cast.
Yes.
So, yes.
It's not the typical movie where if you're a girl, there's one girl you can relate to.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
you usually can't relate to her.
Yeah, you could be any of the three sisters and two of the other main characters. Yeah.
So the idea that Allison gets is daylight savings time, essentially. Her and Max, kind of team up on this. And he comes in and he says, I know something you don't. It's daylight savings time. And what we, the viewer, don't know at this point is Allison is outside putting the headlights on to make it appear like dawn is happening. So the sisters start freaking out. And he takes Danny, and this is when
he kicks over the potion.
Yeah, Ice and Jay are pleading that he set them free, and he just steals the sneakers back. And they're on their way out. And Danny thinks it actually is dawn. So Danny wants to see them turn to dust. And Allison has such a good part here. Yeah.
She's just like weird
She's like doing this weird mime dance, kind of whistling. I don't know if it's she couldn't whistle or she's trying to be quiet so the witches don't hear her. But either way, it's really good.
A little of both, maybe.
And this is when they get in the car and they're driving. They are driving back to the cemetery. They're trying to get to the cemetery. And this is when Bette Midler pulls up next to...
Pull over!
Let me see your driver's permit.
And Tara is always like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would she know that joke? And I'm usually the stickler for stuff like this.
Yeah.
And my response is, who cares? I love this part.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of scenes where Winifred gets kind of like a... Hey, like a 1920s newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I do like her delivery.
O'Hallahan here.
Yeah, I do like the delivery of it for sure. And so when they get to the cemetery, on their way, Max runs into Billy.
Yeah, in the cemetery.
In the cemetery, yeah. Allison and Danny run ahead with Binks. Max gets caught up by Billy, and Winifred's shouting at Billy, and Max has a pocket knife, and Billy takes it. And he cuts open his mouth. These are where the moths fly out.
And the dust.
It's very quick that it happens. And then this is where he finds out that Billy wants nothing to do with Winifred. He has some choice words for her and is not too thrilled to see her.
My theory is this. He was actually trying to get the book through most of it because I think when his mouth is closed, he's under the control of Winnie. And I think when he cuts his mouth open, because why wouldn't he just go look for a knife if all he had to do was cut his mouth open? I think he's still.
I guess that's true. He's under the trance because she kind of commanded him to do something.
I think he's compelled to do it. He's not in a trance because the whole time she's telling him to do stuff, he's like, brr, and he keeps doing the like.
Yeah.
He clearly does not like Winifred.
He is a great physical actor.
Doug Jones, and he's
so good.
He did the Shape of Water, which was that weird movie that won the Best Picture. He was the man in the like suit. He's in Hellboy. He's in Pan's Labyrinth. Always in these huge elaborate suits where he has to do big work to get his emotions and acting across. And he's so good in this. But yeah, my theory is once he opens his mouth, he
kind of has set himself free.
He's of his own volition again.
Yeah.
And he's like, hag, trollop.
Yeah, it's really great. So then when Max shows up, they're ready to kind of pounce on Bill, and he's like, no, good zombie, like friendly zombie. And so they all team up. They put Danny in his grave. They do the circle of salt. The witches come, and there's kind of this battle. And during this part is when I really observed how fast they are flying.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in this scene. More so than the other scenes. They are going, how fast, if you had to guess, mile per hour?
Oh, I mean, faster than you walk, but not super fast.
But it seems fast.
I think the one where she's coming after...
like coming
Max,
at the camera.
I predict that maybe that didn't go off quite how they wanted it to because it's a little bit, the framing's a little weird and Max looks legitimately worried and she's like, like coming out. Like, I think that scene may have gone because there was a lot of shots in the thing where they did faster. They showed like, oh, this one went too fast, this one went too slow, like them trying to get it.
Well, and
I
Sarah
think that
goes
one,
really fast too in certain points. And so there's kind of this back and forth, trying to get the book, trying to get... Oh, no, she has the book at this point, trying to get Danny.
Well, because they have the little bit of potion left. We forgot to say this. And they go, okay, we've got all these children here. Let's just give it to one of them.
Yeah.
And Winifred goes, no, I want that child. She called me ugly.
Yes.
And that's when I, every year for the first time ever, say... Well, truly her hubris is what, if only
she just like had any child. And so it is this whole back and forth. Billy loses his head. They knock off Billy's head at one point, and that's when Danny gets out of the grave and out of the salt circle is to help Billy find his head. She picks up his head. And then they get Danny, and she's trying to force feed her the potion, and then that's when Max takes it himself. So he sacrifices himself for his sister. and sunrise is slowly coming up. And as this is happening, there's also a really good bit when they're battling the witches, and Mary has the vacuum with the cord coming out of it, and they pull on the cord and then kind of let go of it, and her and Sarah go flying. And so for the last couple minutes of the movie, it's just Winifred who we're seeing, because Sarah and Mary have kind of like drifted off into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And as sunrise approaches, Winifred is trying to suck the life out of Max, and
she's on the hollow ground.
So her feet start smoking, and then she starts turning to stone, and then all that stone explodes, and then Sarah and Mary kind of explode in the air on their brooms. And that's how it ends, with a last line of
Thackeray Binks comes back as a ghost and is like, "Thank you so much." And as Emily like comes up from it, she's like, "Thackeray," like a character who wasn't supposed to be in it that much, so can't act very well. And then they walk off.
I didn't think she was that bad.
Thackeray, like doing the like
well,
up and
she's
looking up. Like,
I mean, I don't know.
No,
I
she
didn't
looked.
think it's that bad.
She looked like she was. It was a like a chorus member of a middle school. Anyway, the point is, at the end they walk off the sunset. She's like, "What took you so long?" He's like, "I had to wait for a virgin to light a candle."
I had to wait 300 years for a virgin to light the candle. So he like
was
emphasized 300, and he emphasizes virgin.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not very funny, and it's just like such a dead line. Like if they just would have taken that out,
yeah,
like
and just had the
walking
sunrise.
off with
Yeah, I think it would have been fine. It is kind of a weird last line.
No, I think they could have done that whole scene and then just taken out the audio of that line, and just had them walk off together. Yeah. Because I think it just holds its own. It's just they felt like they needed some punchline at the end.
Well, and did we mention that is not the voice of that actor?
Jason Marsden is the voice, who I believe is the voice of Max from a Goofy movie. So
I couldn't remember. I think we did mention it, but I couldn't remember. But that's how the film ends. And then during the credits, you see all the parents kind of tired. You know, they're
the
released
dad's like,
from
I thought
the
LA was
spell.
a party town.
Yeah, and then you see Ice and Jay are still in the cages singing "Row, row, row your boat."
And then the setup for the sequel.
The book's eye opens at the last possible moment. I am curious how they're going to bring them back, since they did kind of explode. I know they can bring them back anyway, but it's more of me being curious what the story is
magic, baby.
I'm just curious what the story is going to be.
So I feel like we've talked about most of this. But let's go ahead. How was the princess, who I think was Max in this case?
I think he was good.
Fine.
I think he portrayed a teenager well.
I think he's better than like the typical like this kind of movie
angsty teenager. Because he has that, but he also has a lot of charm and character, I think, as well.
He also, I feel like, something we didn't talk about, I feel like he could have spent the whole movie being like, oh, so what if I'm a virgin or I'm not a virgin? Like, he just seems to be like, yeah, I'm a virgin. Like, leave me alone about it. Like, he just doesn't
there's a minute or two of that, but yeah, it's not a thorough line through the movie
like
that he's like uncomfortable about it or whatever.
I don't think he's ever uncomfortable about it. He's more annoyed that everyone keeps bringing it up.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's like, really? He's like, yeah, I'll get it tattooed on my head. Like, who cares? How is the prince, which is Allison? I actually like Allison more this time than I think I have in previous watchings. I think she's, like you said, she's got a lot to do.
She's very capable and competent, and I think she's also, you know, Danny looks up to her brother, but I think she also, you know, in the end sees Allison as somebody to look up to as well. I like the relationship that Allison is looking after Danny by the end, just like Max is.
How are the sidekicks henchmen? I love Billy Butcherson.
And Binks. I like Binks a lot as a cat.
Oh, I think Binks is fine. I like it was nice going, Max, like at the beginning, his first line, as a cat.
Yeah. No, Billy Butcherson's fantastic.
He's wonderful. Like, we've spoken, you know, about Doug Jones and everything. Favorite musical number? I mean, it's gotta be
I Put a Spell on You.
Mm-hmm. I think
Sarah's song is very good.
Sarah's song is underrated. I think it's because it takes a back seat to Put a Spell on You, because it's so good.
It is very trance-like. It's got this lullaby quality to it. I like the melody as well as the vocals for it.
Our big Does It Hold Up? I think we talked about female character agency.
Talked about as far as the cast.
Yes. Drinking and smoking. You know, there's that one smoking, like they mentioned cigarettes once.
Yeah.
Ethnic representation we had a little bit of an issue with, because this is a very, very white movie, and I'd like to see some diversity in the new one.
Yeah, I hope so.
In fact, I think if their mother was like, if Eartha Kitt were still alive, she would have been a perfect.
She would be
their
good.
mother.
Yeah.
Just not ever talked about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
who cares? Guns and firearms. There's some stuff with the hanging, and there's, is it appropriate for kids? It's a PG movie. I think it's a pretty light PG.
Super curious for listeners who have kids, because I saw this. How old was I in '93?
You would have been 8.
I don't know that I'm curious if I saw it when it first came out, but I was probably 10 or 11 when I saw it.
Yeah, when you
if
saw
not,
it.
If I didn't see it at 8. But I am curious, for those of you who have children and have younger children, I'm curious, what are their reactions to when they've watched it, and how young would you allow your child to watch this film? Because I do think it has that nostalgia piece to where when you're an adult, you're like, oh my God, I love this movie. And then you go to show it. You know what I mean? And I feel like, I don't want to compare it to Goonies, but I feel like your sister has that story about Goonies where like they loved Goonies and they wanted to show it to your nephews, and then they realized that your nephews were scared. I know it's not the same movie, but I'm curious if there's any of that with this film.
I think it's a little like there's some kind of scary stuff, but I don't think it's not Goonies level.
No.
But it's it's a pretty. I think it's a solid PG, but it's not anything like I think there's some stuff you'd probably. I'm thinking this is probably a situation where I'm more worried because I know the implications of things than a kid would actually be.
Yeah.
It's time. It's time to rank.
Oh my gosh.
The Sanderson Sisters, and I'm very excited.
Which way do you want to go?
All 3 of them.
No. But who do you want to do first?
Oh no, I think we're doing them as a group.
Oh, we are. We're not doing them individually.
It's the Sanderson Sisters.
Okay, that's fine.
Which I think may help them, but I think it'd be
fine.
harder to rank them individually. But
okay, that's fine.
Frightening. I think they want to eat children.
I think in the beginning, I think when they're older, I think when they're older, I think they're.
You just hated their teeth. You had Jafar teeth about them.
I did, but no, but I do think they were scary in the beginning. They were very, they're not. They had some comical moments, I guess, in the beginning too, but there is this scary quality to them, and I think as the movie goes on, I think Winifred, more so than the other two, gets more intense.
I think she gets more frantic, but I don't know if I'd give her frightening. I think they're about a 2 or a 3 frightening for me.
Interesting. I'm going to go with a 3.
Okay, I think I'm going to do the same thing.
I was leaning towards a 4, but I think a 4 is too generous.
Well,
because if you think about how scared everyone is of them.
Exactly. I think we should be a little careful about being generous when we can, because if you're going to be like me, I'm going to be very generous in other sections.
Yes. All right,
for example,
go ahead.
Funny.
5.
5.
Yeah.
No question. I laughed out loud.
I laugh out loud every
time.
year. I know all the lines. I know all the words, and it's still funny.
Fierce. The Divine
5.
Miss M. 5.
But all 3 again, like I think it would be interesting to rank them separately, but
I think they're going to be so close it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's fine, but I do think each one of them have very different types of fierceness, but all carry themselves very well.
Yes. Effective. Now, I don't think they're like a 5. But they
kill Emily.
They get killed twice, and they come back.
And they killed Emily.
Yes.
And that was their goal, was to test the potion out. So they do that goal.
Yes.
They just don't get the rest of the children because the townspeople get to them first.
At the same time, and this is a big mark against them, I think them being their own enemy at the end and not following through with that should be marked against them.
Yeah.
I think they're a solid 3. I will not accept anything less than a 3, but I think
they're not a 5.
They're not a 5. So I think I'm going to do a 3, because I think by my own standard that every year I say their hubris is their downfall, I have to give them a 3, because that's like 2
still
points.
give them a 4.
I can do whatever I want. This is a made up system.
I think I'm going to give them a 4.
Okay.
I think that I don't know. This ranking, I feel like I have been all over the place in general with
It's fine.
Sometimes I'm too generous to people and not. I don't know.
It's almost like we made this up a year ago.
That's true. I'm giving them a 4.
Okay. Design.
5.
Yeah, I think the 3 of them are so different. I think this is one of the things where I think doing them as a group is so interesting because they're all three so different. We talked about why Bette Midler looked the way she did.
Yeah,
and
and Mary's hair looking like the shape of a witch's hat, and we did not talk about that. But yeah, they all have very specific, distinct looks that if you saw their silhouettes, you'd know who is who.
Yes, and
without
then the coloring you said was a big thing. They each had a very
they each had their own color that Max's tie-dye shirt represents in the beginning.
Go away heat. I'm going to say a 1, but I could be talked into a 2 because they eat children.
I know. That's kind of where...
I believe in the past I've given children a 2.
I'm going to give them a 2 for Go Away Heat because of the eating children, because of the...
biting of the tongues for you.
The biting of the tongue. And I think I love them, but I do think you've kind of got to give them a little bit of that.
Now, yes factor...
5.
5, no question. I think this is going to be an interesting.
I'm curious where they're going to end up.
So, and I think
I
they're going to be pretty high.
About them being in the villain ranking just because.
It's one of the reasons I said we should do this as a normal episode because I think they deserve to be in the villain ranking.
Yeah.
Their ranking is a 28.5.
Okay, and Ursula's.
Holy cow! They are tied for second place.
Well, I was going to say Ursula's 31 something, right?
Yes.
So are they tied with Cruella?
Yes.
Oh, they're good there. Is Cruella the only second place or is there multiple?
There's only second place.
Wow.
Let me say this. I think we're being very kind to the Sanderson sisters. And normally I would be like, well, objectively. I think if we were being super objective, they might rank a little lower. But
not by much, I don't think.
No, I think they'd easily be in the top 10.
I think if I didn't do a 4 and I did a 3, that would give them what? A
0.5?
It would be a 28.
So that would get them tied for 6th. So they'd be tied with if you didn't do that, they'd be tied with the Evil Queen and Maleficent.
I actually like them with Cruella because Cruella is wild like they are.
I think they deserve a place easily up there. I think, one thing we're seeing here is that kind of the feminist icons are really being propelled to the top, and I think they deserve to be there.
I think they deserve to be there as well, and I also think, we're a little biased. We watch this movie every year. Like, we love them. So I think that plays into our ranking, but I'm okay with that.
Hey, if you don't like it, you can get your own podcast, and you can get your own villain ranking.
Call us up or send us an email.
707-YO-TRPD1. That's 707-YO-TRPD1.
And say, I have a bone to pick with you.
Exactly. Let us know what you think about this ranking. But before we go, one last thing, Tara, and I think this is maybe the easiest time we've answered this. On the place of honor on the shelf in a clamshell edition, or do you lock it away forever in the vault?
No, I'm dipping it in gold and then putting it on my shelf. No, I used to own it. I don't know that we do anymore, but I was reading that there were all
We have it on DVD.
Yeah, I was reading that there were all these extras on the 2018 copy that came out, and I'm like, ooh, do I need to go find that? And I just might. So, it definitely goes on my shelf. I'm assuming it goes on yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were
the way you said that, I was like, what?
No, I was thinking about something. I was thinking about I was doing my thoughts for wrapping this thing up.
I think you've come a long way because from being resistant to watching this film to loving it the way you do, I think it was
huge. Just there was some pressure and anxiety on me the first time. The second time I was able to relax and enjoy it. But it's got that another movie we've recently watched for spooky season, Beetlejuice quality, where I'm like, it always makes me laugh. It's weird.
We always see something different.
New every time.
Yeah, and Beetlejuice is another one we watch every year.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for listening. The next actual episode you will listen to, we are going to continue with the spooky season. We will be re-releasing The Nightmare Before Christmas on actual Halloween, and then we will have a very special mini-sode our mini tale with the Muppet Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, so we've got a couple spooky ones coming up.
Kind of setting the table for us to do more Muppet stuff in the future. But we won't see you till then. Won't see any of you really. But have a very happy Halloween, guys, and always remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend about our podcast. But until then, we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening, Scary Tale friends. Don't forget to send us an email at trprincessdiaries@gmail.com or tweet to us at trpdiaries. Search for Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries on Facebook to join in the fun. Or call our super easy to remember phone number, 707-YO-TRPT1. That's 707-968-7731. Remember to give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Creep it real.